Accusations of partner violence. This is another way that fathers are excluded from children's lives. Accusations of partner violence should not be allowed to deny children time with their other parent, when arrangements can be made to avoid all interaction between the parents. So obviously that's having changeovers at school, preferably, or by other third parties. When it's school holidays, you can always get a third party friend or a relation, or you can even use those horrible contact services if you like. This way the family courts or the federal magistrates courts can focus on the cases where the child really is at risk, where allegations aren't made just to protect the status quo, which has been wrongfully established in the first place, as is most often the case now. This would lead to reduced risk of bad decisions, and we hear of mothers complaining about, anti-shared parenting activists complaining about children being sent to abusive fathers. Well, I find it very hard to believe that any father would abuse their children, but that's just my personal view, and I have to accept that occasionally it does happen. Well, even in those cases, the judge is less likely to make a bad decision because he's not going to be overwhelmed with all those applications that are contrived. The benefits of this solution, they're numerous and they're compelling. Firstly, it prevents conflict. No excluded parent, no aggrieved party, no distress, no anger, no pain, no emotional trauma to the children. What distresses a parent more than seeing their children suffer? Nothing causes conflict and distress as much as denying a parent involvement with their children. You wouldn't go into a paddock and try and stop a cow from being with its calf because you'd get right bollocking. It's the same thing with humans, and it causes immense distress. The effect, it would prevent most custody disputes from even starting in the first place, and this is my main point, because there is no aggrieved party to initiate proceedings. Importantly, it puts into effect Australia's stated obligations as signatories of the UN Charter of Children's Rights to a relationship with both their parents. The stability and the status quo of shared parenting, that is the child's experience in an intact marriage, is preserved. By protecting children's rights to association with both their parents, we are acting in their best interests. So lots of benefits there. Solves most of the problems. It is my submission that this is a silver bullet. This removes the problem. We've all been focusing on solving the symptoms of the problem. The CSA, the false allegations. We can remove the problem altogether by protecting the children from having their parents removed in the initial instance, in the first place. I want to comment briefly on issues that have polarised the debate about family law reform, and it needs to be remembered here that there are lots of representatives in this discussion who have vested interests in maintaining the portrayal of frightened mums and angry dads, those who are ideologically disposed to helping women and by hindering men. Social workers, for example, go to university and they learn about patriarchal men and how all men are bastards, and then they go out and practice what they've learned. Shouldn't surprise anybody. These groups usually claim to represent women. And I'd like to ask all the women here, how many women do you think that these groups, like the Women's Refuge Centre and the various other women's activists, represent normal Australian women? Women that love children and women that love men. Thank you. What's more important to women than men? What's more important to men than women? This gender polarised debate is an absolute a furphy. It's a power grab and nothing more. It's despicable. 90% of people support shared parenting solution. How could it possibly be that they're all men? It's an absolute nonsense. And the terrible thing about these vested interests, most of them are vested because they derive their income from the industry, and of course they're not going to want to end that. And of course the rest of them are vested interests because they're on this nutty anti-male trip. They think that somehow by marginalising men they're improving conditions for women. Nonsense. Abuse of women and children is the main argument used to oppose shared parenting, despite the fact that excluding fathers generally causes increased distress and disadvantage for children and mothers. They've got to shoulder the whole 100% of the burden of looking after the kid, for example. We're constantly being told Australia says no to violence against women, as if violence towards men doesn't matter, despite the statistical evidence that females perpetrate slightly more partner violence than men. And anybody, all you have to do is go to the internet. It's well known that partner violence is equally perpetrated by men and women. It's not a wrestling match. The fact that the man's bigger and stronger has got nothing to do with it. It's not a contest of strength. It's somebody losing the plot and going the bash on the other. And of course, the women like to the social workers and the family court and the practitioners like to talk about the other forms of abuse: psychological abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, and perceived abuse. Well, of course, as we all know, emotional abuse, and as we all know, men cop emotional abuse just as much, if not a lot more, than women in some areas. For example, the kitchen. You know, if you're a man, you don't want to put your foot wrong in the kitchen, otherwise you get your head bitten off. And that's just the way things are. But, you know, to use these arguments to exclude a parent from a children's life is abuse of the child. Unfortunately, the extreme exclusionist views of interest groups who oppose shared parenting, the shared parenting solution, are often relied on for expert advice in inquiries like this, forums like this, and in the courts. We've got to resist this because they're acting against the interests of our children. It's my submission that their views are at odds with the community and at odds with children, and they're given undue weight. I commend the government. Unfortunately, there's no representatives of the government here anymore, but I commend the government for its effort to change what is essentially a mutually exclusive court process. In other words, one of the parents cops it, into one that protects children from losing a parent. They have done things to move in that direction. As you know, it hasn't been terribly successful, and they need to do a lot more. But at least they're starting to try. Once it acts to protect children from substantially losing a parent in the first place, it will have succeeded in preventing most custody cases from even going to court. The family relationship centres will then be more effective because one party won't be able to remove the other off their own bat, as happens now. It's a mistake to look at family law as a gender issue. It's a children's issue. Men and women's interests mostly are aligned on the issue of shared parenting. This is what the polls illustrate. If there is a dichotomy in this debate, it's between people on one hand and vested interests on the other. Accommodating the demands of groups opposed to shared parenting is electorally unpopular and does not secure the female vote. I wish we had a few ministers in here so I could remind them of that. If they want to be popular in the electorate, what they have to do is protect children from having one of their parents removed. I believe that if the Liberal Party came out and made a public declaration of supporting children, protecting children from having one of their parents removed upon separation, in the way I suggested, I believe it would be enough to get the Liberal Party back into power. And I've actually issued a press release about this. Hopefully it'll be run, because the Liberal Party, God bless them, they need something to get them over the line. The most important thing in the world for everybody is children. In closing, my question to everybody, and especially the government, is will the government condone one party unilaterally removing the other parent from a child's life? Will it condone this practice? Or will it ensure that only a court can make such a life-changing decision based on evidence presented to it? Will it deliver what all of us want so desperately, happy, successful children with two parents in their lives? Thank you. Are there any questions?